What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with another Smiths non-album tune from the era of their The Queen is Dead album. Thank you again to Days Illusion. And the next track is Half a Person, which, as a Monty Python fan, inevitably makes me think of the Eric the Half a Bee sketch and song. Half a bee must ipso facto half not be. Regardless of the philosophical absurdity of that sketch, yeah, it makes me think about someone who, maybe by their own estimation, and knowing Morrissey's lyrics, I'm inclined to think in that regard, maybe by another person's perception, maybe both, maybe the narrator, Morrissey's character, internalizing some criticism that is being levied against him. But the idea that someone only has half of the attributes or characteristics or behavior that normally constitutes a full person, maybe feeling like they used to be a full or whole person when they were attached to or involved with another person, but then after that becomes severed or disconnected, they only feel like half a person subsequently. So yeah, those are some ideas I had. Let's see what it's actually about, or at least what I can catch on a first listen. This is the Smiths. The track is Half a Person, and it's a B-side. I think it's listed as a B-side. Yeah, non-album single B-side from the era of The Queen is Dead.
Call me morbid, call me pale. I spent 6 years on your trail. 6 long years on your trail. Call me morbid, call me pale. I spent 6 years on your trail. 6 full years of my life on your trail. And if you have 5 seconds to spare, then I'll tell you the story of my life. 16, clumsy and shy, I went to London and died. I booked myself in at the YWCA. I said I like it here, can I stay? I like it here, can I stay? Do you have a vacancy for a back scrubber? She was left behind and sad, and she wrote to me equally down. She said in the days when you were hopelessly poor, I just liked you more. And if you have 5 seconds to spare, then I'll tell you the story of my life. 16, clumsy and shy, I went to London and died. I booked myself in at the YWCA. I said I like it here, can I stay? I like it here, can I stay? And do you have a vacancy for a back scrubber? Call me morbid, call me pale. I've spent too long on your trail, far too long, chasing your tail. And if you have 5 seconds to spare, then I'll tell you the story of my life. 16, clumsy and shy, that's the story of my life. 16, clumsy and shy, the story of my life. That's the story of my life.
those secondary guitar melodic flourishes there. I mean, there's the normal, or one of their main guitar sound types is that sort of strummy, just, like indie rock guitar vibe. And indeed, overall, I would say sonically, this is very much in their classic sound. But yeah, there were these like more expressive or melodic guitar flourishes at the end of the tune. I especially enjoyed those. But I was really focused on the lyrics, and I feel like I heard most everything clearly, but I don't quite know how to take it. So it's like, number one, I'll say that he's talking about different points in his life when he was clumsy and shy, like, 16 clumsy and shy, 20 clumsy and shy. So it sounds like, this is an ongoing characteristic of his, or a state of being, and time and experience and even a different location isn't necessarily changing it. But then I'm wondering, okay, so like YMCA, Young Men's, what is it? I forget the full phrase, but it's like for young men, right? So then like, is the YWCA, is that for like women? And then he's like referring to a woman, and then he's asking if he can like stay there, which like, maybe I'm misreading that, but it sounds like if the narrator is indeed male, then it's like he's following this woman, I think, to London from Manchester, and then like maybe he just relocated to London. And indeed, the previous tune, London, and I think there's been one or two others that have referenced him going to London. What was it, like Piccadilly? I'm forgetting one of the previous ones, but I'm trying to get a sense for whether like he's essentially stalking this woman, even to the point of like trying to stay at a place where he probably wouldn't be allowed to stay. But then it's like there's a suggestion that like there's some self-assessment happening here, that like here, and in fact, it makes me laugh. Like, let me tell you the story of my life if you've got 5 seconds. So he spent 6 years following this woman, or this girl, but then like he essentially says that his whole life could be summed up in 5 seconds, which presumably is the like clumsy and shy description, and like that's everything. That's who I've been. That's what I am. I'm half a person. So yeah, I don't know, but like, chasing your tail. Now obviously the idea of a dog chasing their own tail, they're not going anywhere, and that like they're forever doomed not to catch it, which like, they're just essentially spinning in circles. Now I guess if you're chasing someone else's tail, it could be more of a circuitous journey, and you might actually go from place to place, but it sounds like it's unsuccessful, and that he spent multiple years doing this, and seemingly, if his description of himself over the course of several years remains the same, then he hasn't learned anything, he hasn't developed anything, he hasn't found some new version of himself with this person. So yeah, I don't really know what's happening here, but it sounds like he's fixated on someone, a female, and maybe followed her from Manchester to London, or maybe once he got to London, he started following her. And as I said, the whole YWCA thing, I don't know if it's like, he's trying to continue following her in a situation or in an institution or organization that's not really built for him as a male. Now, of course, like, the narrator, like, it could be a female, but it feels like it's male, and it's like a typical Morrissey narrator in that it's self-deprecating and sort of melancholy and so on. So yeah, I feel like I've got some of the pieces of this story. I just don't know how they all sit on the board together. But yeah, a classic Smiths tune in terms of the sonics and the guitar work, and Morrissey's melodic and yet again sort of depressive sounding vocal, and a narrative I'm very curious about, but I couldn't quite stitch together on a first listen, but definitely a cool B-side. Once again, thank you to Days Illusion and to all those who've continued to comment on the Smiths journey, as well as to Mr. Solo, who provided the original few albums on this deep dive, which has now been going for 2-3 years. So yes, more Smiths coming. Indeed, there's another folder after this. Let's see, just get a sense of how many tunes. Okay, so there's one more in this folder, which is It Really So Strange? And then it's unreleased, unmastered Peel session. So apparently that's like a live performance. from the Peel sessions, which like I don't know too much about that, but I think it's something that's been talked about in one or two other deep dives. And actually, like there was a appearance of these acid techno legends. They like there's a 2 LP release called the John Peel Sessions, and I remember that was the first place I ever saw that name / phrase. Okay, so then yeah, Strange Ways Here We Come. There's an album of non-album track or a compilation of non-album tracks from that era, and there's only 6 in there, including a live tune. So we'll look forward to that. But yeah, basically at least a little more Smiths, and if you didn't know, I'm sure most of you here do, but I've been going through Morrissey's solo material too, so I believe we have a fair bit more to go in that regard as well. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.